What's up guys, welcome to my channel. If you own a 993 or a 964 or really any other air-cooled Porsche, it's very likely you've heard of the Fister exhaust system. So in today's video, which is a little bit different from my usual, I do a remote interview with Darin Fister, the dude who owns FD Motorsports and the guy who invented the Fister exhaust. I feel like the Fister exhaust setup is the best sound I've ever heard out of any air-cooled Porsche, so that's why I'm so excited to talk to Darin today. Now this is a little bit different from my usual video format, and I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments whether or not you like this kind of thing. I really enjoyed chatting with Darin on camera. It's a little bit like it's on Zoom meetings, so the quality isn't quite as sharp as I'd like, but still, I think it was really interesting to chat with somebody across the country, and if you guys like this kind of content, I can do a lot more of it. In this video, Darin's going to take us through the evolution of his business, that light bulb moment when he realized that he had something really cool with his exhaust, as well as the other products he offers. He's going to talk to us about his personal 993 and his 964, and he's also going to give us some tips for how to select an exhaust for our car. So let us now jump into the interview. Darin, I appreciate you spending a little time with me on my channel. I know I have a lot of 993 and 964 fanatics who follow along, and certainly the 993 guys are going to recognize your name because your products are almost like synonymous with 993 at this point. So it's a real honor to have you on the channel. And so I thought we could just have a conversation. I mean, you and I have spoken several times, but I'd like to dig in a little bit and understand your business and maybe where you've been and where you're going.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks you, Will. I really appreciate it. I really like what you do. I follow you as well. So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come on and chat with you. We never chatted face to face like this, so it's kind of cool.
So I'd love to start and just understand maybe a little bit about your business, where you've been, where you're going, anything cool that's coming down the line.
For sure. Well, let's start at the beginning. About 20 so years ago, I ended up, I wanted to get a Porsche forever. Thought I was going to end up with the 930. And as I was shopping for 930s, the 993s kept popping up. And it was just one of those things where I just really started liking the looks of the 993. It was modern looking, but still enough old school, At that point, they must have been like 6 years old, 5 or 6 years old or something. They were like the same price around the 930s at the time. And horsepower was good compared to the 930s. That was a naturally aspirated car. So it kind of just drew me into the 993 and ended up picking one up, of course, the silver one that I still have. I call it the mule because it's the most reliable one I have. It's always there when I need it. And it's been the test mule from the beginning. I mean, that's what I built all my parts off of. And that's what started it all. So once I picked that car up, I was a newbie on Rennthusiast and just started going on there and chatting with people and found some things with the car that I thought I wanted to make better, and I was a fabricator. I was a welder already from my younger days. So I just started tinkering. And first thing I tinkered with, of course, was the exhaust. It just was too quiet, and I wanted to have a little more oomph out of it. And then it kind of just people on Rennthusiast started catching on. And of course, I did all my local friends that had 993s wanted it done. So I did all my friends, and then I'd go on runs, and people were like, "What exhaust is that?" And oh, it's my exhaust, and they're like, "Can you do mine?" So I, one every 6 months, I'd do a set of mufflers for somebody in my garage, pull the car in the driveway, jack it up, take the mufflers off, go in my garage, tear them apart, whatever I was doing. So that's how it all started. Just very slow, very organic, no thought in my mind that I want to have a Porsche shop. I want my name to be out there in the industry. It was none of that. It was just because I love the cars and I love tinkering. That was what started it.
Well, do you, just a little bit side question, like, do you run a stage 2 or stage 3? I need to know.
Oh, my car?
Yeah.
Oh, stage 3. Absolutely.
That's right, absolutely. Man. Stage 3 for life. My 993 came with a stage 2 on it, which is it's badass, like for sure.
Oh yeah.
But I was rolling with a buddy of mine who runs a stage 3, and we were passing each other in a tunnel.
Yeah.
And so we sped up and then started decelerating at high revs, and it's just like, man, it sounded so good. So I had to swap. Well, so back to your journey. When did you know, and maybe it was more of like an organic shades of gray process, but when did it occur to you like, hey, I got something really special here, and this could get bigger?
In 2008 and 2009, mainly 2008, the business was growing. I was doing a couple sets of mufflers a month for people. 996 guy got a hold of me. Hey, I really like what you're doing with the 993. Can you do something for the 996? And I said, can you leave me your car for like a week? And I'll try some stuff. So that's how I ended up doing 996. And then that pretty much the same type of mod developed up into the 997s, 997.2s, 991s. It kind of worked along the whole path. So at the time I was doing, I was a contractor, a general engineering contractor, but I was doing ornamental steelwork. I would do ornamental gates, estate gates and handrails and things like that. Well, in 2008, the housing market just was crashing like crazy. And I was struggling like what to do. And as that was going down, the car stuff just kept increasing. People at that time, even though the economy was crashing, people that had their Porsches still wanted to, they wanted to fix up their baby. They wanted to keep their toy fun because everything else was kind of sucking at the time. So it's like, at least I can enjoy my car. So that business started growing. So basically what I did was I just kind of stepped across from being a contractor to, in 2009, I started my LLC. I would have guys come over when I do their exhaust, and then they would bring me a suspension kit, and they're like, "Hey, can you put these Bilsteins on my car?" Or "Hey, can you change my oil while it's here? Hey, can you do this? Can you change my clutch?" Right? And I was a mechanic, but I wasn't a Porsche mechanic. I was just like, I knew my way around a car pretty good, but all the Porsche stuff was somewhat new. I mean, I'd worked on my car a lot, but I would just always say yes. It's one of those things. Like, "Oh, can you do this?" I'd be like, "Yes, no problem." And if it took me 12 hours to do something because I was learning it, I would charge them for like, 4 hours.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't charge them for all my learning time, but that's how it happened. And I just kept doing more and doing more and doing more. And then pretty soon, people would have questions about stuff on Renlist, and I would answer questions because my knowledge base was just growing and growing and growing. And then it pretty much came to where people thought that I knew what I was doing. So, no better than anybody else. I'm no smarter than anybody else. In fact, I'm probably less smart than a lot of people, but it's just something that I enjoyed doing. So I kept doing it and just moving forward and pushing it forward. So the funny thing about my shop is my shop's very small. I have a 1,600 square foot shop. It's not very large. Right now I have 3 fabricators that work for me. They don't work in my shop. They work outside of my shop, but I've had people are surprised when I answer the phone because my online persona is that my shop's really big, and it's just not. It's a small business. I've always kept it that way. I put out a lot of product and a lot of stuff out of my shop, but when people call and I answer the phone, it's funny. People are like, "Oh, wait, I'm talking to Darin." It's like, it's pretty funny. But I've even had people on vacation, like from the East Coast or whatever, and they say, "Hey, I'm going to be, in San Francisco on vacation. I want to come by and meet you and see your shop." And they come by my shop, and I only have 2 lifts in there, and it's pretty small. And
Yeah.
they pull up and they get out, and they're like, I see their face. They're looking around. They're like, "Oh, I, I thought it would be bigger."
I would love to know, what advice would you give anyone who may have a 993 or a 964, for example, who they're considering doing an exhaust swap, but maybe they don't really know where to go. I mean, do you
Mhm.
see common mistakes guys make, or any advice you give to somebody who's considering doing that?
Yeah, it comes down to doing your research. I of course I'd say that my product's the best, but that's just me. I don't, you know, I think that do research. A lot of the aftermarket stuff, they have issues. They have fitment issues. They have droning issues. If you've ever driven a car that drones, oh man, I mean, once you do it, you fire the car up and it's loud and it's aggressive. And oh my gosh, it sounds great. Then you drive it around for an hour and like, why is my head hurting? Why am I getting a headache?
It's awful.
And
It's
yeah,
awful.
it's terrible. It's
My 3.2 that I've sold, my 86, I put an exhaust on it. Company starts with D. I'll leave it at that. And
yeah,
it was terrible, man. I mean, it
yeah,
sounded good at higher revs. It sounded good from outside of the car, but around town, it would drive you nuts.
yeah,
It was incessant, right between like
yeah.
2000 and
It's
3000.
terrible.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
terrible when that happens. The other cool thing that I like is that I don't manufacture a lot of stuff from scratch. I mean, with the exhausting noise, I repurpose what Porsche already developed.
Mhm.
So I don't have these huge overhead costs where I'm, pressing out these muffler skins and cans and having to assemble them all together. So that keeps the cost a lot lower compared to a lot of the stuff that's out there. And of course, I'm biased, but I think they sound better than a lot of what's out there. And the way I do it, the way I design it, it cannot have drone. So as I'm developing, I'm doing my R&D, I want to do my testing, I figure out the things that I've done in the past that work that don't create drone, and I usually implement them along the lines. into the newer products. So it's just, I like that because we're not building from scratch. We're kind of reusing and repurposing what's already there, just making improvements on it.
Yeah, I mean, as a user, I would agree with you. I've
Yeah.
put 25,000 miles on my 993 in 3 years, just tons of ripping. And I've had, the stage 2 and the stage 3, and many highway miles, like getting to the places where we drive hard, and it doesn't drone.
Yeah.
You can have fun with it when you want, like it's
Yeah.
controllable, right? Rev
Yeah.
it up and you want to pop
Yeah.
and crackle, but if you're just trying to be tame, it works. So I feel like, your name is synonymous with mufflers, exhausts, but you have other products outside of the mufflers. Like what else are you doing that you ought to share with our viewers here?
Yeah, there's like when cars come through my shop, and a lot of the cars that come through my shop that I actually physically get to work on myself, which I don't do that much anymore because the business is just so crazy. But the ones that I do get to put my hands on, we usually go over. There's usually like 5 things that most cars need if they haven't had it done by now. Now, exhaust is not a need, but it's more like a want. But
it's a need. It's a need.
Yeah. So exhaust is one. My SSKs, I have a couple different choices on that, and the goldenrod. Those are always top. I always recommend those. People love those. They work really well. They make nice improvements. That's something, that you touch like tons of times when you're driving, 100 times when you're driving the car. You always got your hand on it. You're always shifting. So if you can make that experience improved and better, I think that's an excellent one. It's very tactile.
I agree.
Suspension is another one, and then front lower control arm bushings. Generally, those items are like pretty much the go-tos that all the cars that come through my shop end up getting. It's like, those are the things. Let's do this, and it gives you the great starting base where the car handles well, it shifts great, it sounds great. It just creates that experience where this is the way the car should be.
So you've got the 993, which
Mhm.
I feel like is really synonymous with your brand.
Yes.
I've seen it around. It's online and so forth. You have a 964 too.
Yes. Yeah.
Very special car. I've seen some pictures of that car. I'd love to know a little bit about that.
Sure.
And frankly, which one do you prefer?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the car first, and then I'll tell you about which one I prefer. So it's a 91 C2, which I really wanted a C2. I did not want a C4. That whole front axle system on the 964 it's fine, but it's not my favorite to play around with. I really wanted a C2. To be honest, I went to an RWB build a few years back, and people hate them. A lot of people hate them. I don't hate them. I think they're pretty cool. But I just thought for my shop, it'd be cool to build an RWB. And I kind of know a lot of the guys that are in the groups that build them. And so I thought, I really didn't like the 993 RWBs that much. I didn't like the look as much. I like the 964. The 964 and I want the subtle one. I don't want the giant wingy everything. I just kind of like the subtle one. So I thought, if I could pick up a 964, a beater that's like basically a piece of junk, then I wouldn't feel bad about cutting the fenders and doing all that stuff to it. Find a nice one, I'm not going to do it right.
Yeah.
So who am I going to call? I call my buddy Rudy, right? So if you don't know Mr. 993, Rudy from Texas, he and I.
Yeah, I messaged with him a couple of times on Facebook with questions. I mean, what a nice guy. I was so sorry I never got a chance to put a face with the name. I mean, such passion.
Yeah, he was just a great guy. We met many years ago, 12, 13 years ago. They did a big, somebody put together, they were doing a Fister exhaust meet in Texas, like I think it was 2011 or something like that. And Rudy, he probably had a handful of cars at that time. He didn't have that many cars. And he was kind of helping put it together. And he was like, oh, well, I'll trailer 3 of my cars up there. And I saw this happening on Rentless. So I'm like, I got to go, right?
Of course.
I got to go. So I booked a plane ticket and I flew out to Texas. I brought a bunch of swag and gift certificates, and we did a big raffle, and it was an absolute blast. But that's where we met face to face. And after that, we just became fast friends. And I would go to Texas quite often. And when I went, I would stay at Rudy's house. He insisted that I stay with him and his family. And then he and I would stay up like to all hours of the night, just talking. And he had a great testimony, his story about his life and where he came from. And it was just really intriguing. And he's just a fun guy to talk to. And so we just sit and talk for hours and hours and hours. So it became really close because of that, so it was really, I'm really blessed that I actually knew him and got to hang out with him. And I consider us to be really good friends. The last time I saw him was a month before he got ill. I was in Texas. Jill and I were in Texas, and he actually gave me this Porsche watch. It was just, I was leaving and it was sitting on the floor. There was a box on the floor, and he got out of the car and he goes, "Oh, that's for you, by the way." And I'm like, "What? Oh, what is it?" And I pick it up and I open it up, and it's the watch, the whole Porsche thing, and it's really cool. And
Yeah.
I said, I'm like, what's the deal, man? Why are you giving me this? And all he said was, he goes, "You're my boy. You're my boy." And that was it.
So that is unbelievable.
Yeah, that was the last time I got to hang out with him in person. It was, we always have a great time when we go there. His family and my family are very close. But anyway, so back to the 964. So I called him up because he had a few. And I said, "Hey, you got a line on any 964s that are pieces of junk? I kind of want to do a little project with it." And I didn't want to tell people what I was doing because there's so many haters out there that don't like those cars. And I like everything, man. I like purists. I like guys that go crazy with the mods. I like a ton of stuff, right? I'm not just stuck in one lane. I like to venture all over. And I just thought it'd be a good promotion for my shop to do it. And so I was talking to him, and he said, "Well, I'm thinking about selling a few of mine." He goes, "I don't know if you want any crazy colors or anything." And I said, "Well, send me what you got." So he had a cobalt blue, beautiful cobalt blue. And then he had the amethyst car, and he sent me pictures of them. At the time, I had my wife's 993 blue turquoise cabriolet. My plan was to sell that and buy a 964, trade it out. I bought that for her for her birthday, for her 50th birthday. And we'd had it for quite a few years. And it was a tip. It was a beautiful car. I mean, I had that thing dialed. Beautiful car, but it was a tip. And I kind of wanted to get something in a 6-speed. So he sent me pictures, and that amethyst one, I was just like, wow, So I showed my wife, and she goes, "That one, that's the one." So it was a really great story because of course, we worked out a price together, and he said, "Just whenever you want, just come get it. Just let me know." And I said, "Well, our anniversary's coming up." It was in July. I said, "Our anniversary's coming, or June, excuse me. So our anniversary's coming up. We'd like to fly back there. It'll be like our anniversary trip, and then we'll take the car and we'll drive it home, my wife and I." That's what we ended up doing. It was just a great adventure, and took a lot of pictures along the way. It was just super, super fun to do that. I love picking up cars and driving them home, instead of having them trailered in. And you get to know the car, and
Yeah.
hopefully you're going to make it. Hopefully the car's going to make it. Of course, after I got home and had a bunch of issues that I had to fix, but
They
that's
all
okay.
do.
Yeah,
They all do.
Yeah.
They all do. And I've covered that extensively on my channel,
Yeah.
man. I mean, that's
Yeah.
part of the story. I want people who are new to these cars and they want to get in. I want them to have a reality check of what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
Because they don't just show up and they're perfect. I mean, for whatever
No.
reason, talking about the fly-by and drive too, like there's nothing like it. And, the unknown of whether or not the car is going to break down is just part of the fun. You just got to be comfortable with like, hey, I'll figure it out,
Right. I'm a mechanic. I brought some tools. I have my AAA card. It's an adventure. Life's an adventure. We'll make it work. I mean, we're not going to die out in the middle of nowhere on a highway. I got a cell phone, whatever happens. And the more stuff that actually happens, the more of an adventure it becomes. The stuff you can talk about later, right?
That's it. And I think frankly, like emotionally connects you to the car.
Yeah.
More than if it shows up on a transport,
Yeah. So that particular car has 125,000 miles on it. It came from the East Coast. It was ridden hard and put away wet quite a few times. It was not, it's not a pristine car by any means. But you look at it, you stand back and look at it with that color and the gold BBS wheels. That was the other thing. He said, "Well, you can have it with the gold BBS wheels, or I can put the stock wheels back on, the cup wheels back on, and it'll be $5,000 less without the BBS wheels." And I'm like, "Are you kidding? It's got to have those BBS on it, right?"
Yes.
No way.
Yep.
No way I'm taking that car without the BBS wheels. What do you have right now? What's your stable right now?
I've got the 69. I've got a 2014 Cayman S, which is just a joy. I think I touched base with you on that. I mean, I swore I'd get out of water cooled, but for whatever reason, I decided to jump back in, and that's awesome. And then I got my 993, and then I'm pointing at it. It's parked over in the corner with no motor and no trans in it, but it's the 76 ice cream metallic mid-year that as we were talking about, man, it showed up and it was okay, but now it needs sorting, and it's probably going to be $10K plus because I've got to outsource it. So back to the the preference question between the two, because I had both of them side by side too, and I have my thoughts. Before I let you answer, it sounds like you got a real tight emotional tie to the 964, so I got to believe that that's part of the calculus. But which one do you like better?
Yeah, that's a trick question because I do love them both. If you want to say which is the better driving experience, hands down the 993 probably for me. It's just a more refined car. My 993 is a lot nicer than the 964 too. So that goes into the equation because they're not apples to apples, right? If they were both exactly the same condition, but the 964 is one of those ones where you take that car anywhere and it turns heads. I mean, my silver car, my 993 does too, to some degree, but it's silver. It doesn't stand out. You pull up at that amethyst car, and I mean, I'm driving by and people yell like, "Nice car," and things like that, just because it's just so eye catching on the outside. It just really catches people's attention. So I do like them both. It definitely, the 964 feels more tactile. It feels more just a little bit older,
Yeah.
just, which I love, right? That's part of what I love that too. Cause I have some other old cars that I love, just pick one. If I had to lose every car except one, I'd have a hard time stepping away from my 993.
Well, listen, man, I can't thank you enough for spending time with me. And, hopefully the folks that have watched this have enjoyed getting to know you a little better and understanding that we're both, 993 geeks.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's definitely stay in touch, Darin. I appreciate it.
For sure. For sure. You got it.